At the roof of the world, where victory is entwined with fear, Mount Everest keeps secrets that few are willing to confront. It is a peak of glory, and of specters. It is said that legends tell of lost climbers, eerie footprints on snow, and a valley colored in hues that freeze the heart. These are not stories of fantasy but enigmas etched into ice. Everest has been the ultimate embodiment of human aspiration for a long time, but for each tale of victory, there are those steeped in tragedy, turmoil, and enigmas that never get solved. To tread on its slopes is to enter the living museum of human valor and the unknown, where history gets penned in frostbitten wounds and shadows. Are you ready to learn what Everest will not let go of? Everest is usually depicted as a destination climbers go in search of beauty and transcendence, a peak that pushes the boundaries of endurance against avalanches, storms, and thin air. But in 2013, the icy serenity of the mountain was broken not by nature, but by men. British climber John Griffiths and two companions set out on what they believed would be a normal climb, prepared to face only the routine risks of altitude and weather. Instead, they were caught in a brutal battle with the very individuals whose expertise was supposed to see them through, the Sherpas. A disagreement about climbing protocol escalated into anarchy. The Sherpas blamed the climbers for taking deviated routes agreed upon by all and, worse still, offending sacred mountain rules. To the rest of the world, the argument would appear inconsequential. But Everest to Sherpas is not a foreign play area for international adventurers. It is their home, their source of livelihood, and their sacred land. Griffiths and his party returned from the excursion to find, instead of the biting silence of the peaks, rage. Almost a score of masked Sherpas wielding stones and clubs showed up, yelling threats and encircling the climbers' camps. The climbers were stuck in 21,000 feet with no place to hide, begging for peace as human fury was on the verge of overwhelming the risk of avalanches and frostbite. What rescued them was not power, but negotiation. A couple of experienced climbers, such as Melissa Arnott, intervened and employed reason to calm the people down. By daybreak, the crowd had broken up, and Griffiths and his companions abandoned the mountain. Nobody was killed, but the event left a stain on Everest's record, a reminder that its perils are inscribed not merely in storms and ice, but in brittle faith between cultures. But Everest's most sinister secrets go back much further. In 1924, George Mallory and Andrew "Sandy" Irvine made the first known attempt to be the world's first humans at the top. They were last spotted less than 1,000 feet from the summit, trudging steadily upwards before being engulfed by a storm. History is still in debate over the question, did they make it to the top nearly 3 decades ahead of Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, who successfully made it in 1953? When Mallory's body was found frozen in 1999, face down in the snow, the enigma grew deeper. His camera was gone, the only thing that would have given proof. The photo of his wife Ruth, which Mallory had vowed to leave on top, was never discovered. Did he leave it there as he had vowed? Or was it lost to the winds when he collapsed? Irvine, then 22 years old, had been selected for his knowledge of the rudimentary oxygen gear of the day, while Mallory bore with him the dogma that Everest needed to be climbed, because it is there. Their vanishing is Everest's most enduring enigma, an unanswered question carved into ice that casts a shadow over every climber who ventures their route. Everest also bears the burden of ghosts, both literal and figurative. Mountaineers have been reporting creepy encounters on its flanks for decades, ghostly footsteps, wind whispers, brief shadowy apparitions over the snow. Hallucinations are not uncommon at high altitudes, but the sheer volume of such accounts has sustained the lore of Everest as an otherworldly peak. Sherpa Pemba Dorje in 2004 said he saw human forms emerging out of the snow with arms extended, in a gesture of supplication. Other climbers have reported hearing voices saying their names or cold fingers tracing across their shoulders in the death zone. Deniers write these off as oxygen deprivation hallucinations, but to many, Everest is a realm where the dead are reluctant to leave, having been unable to defeat the mountain. At heights above 8,000 meters, Everest becomes something that human minds are not capable of understanding. This is the death zone, with oxygen so thin the body starts to wind down, where even on supplemental tanks, every breath is like being underwater in thin air. Muscles turn to jelly, judgment fogs, and climbers walk into collapse, sometimes sitting down to rest in the snow and never getting up again. It is here that the mountain shreds the final delusions of security. Bodies become frozen markers on the trail, terrible reminders of the razor-thin line between glory and doom. In the death zone, even compassion falters. To attempt to save another often means dying beside them. Everest's true cruelty is not its storms or avalanches, but this zone of no return where ambition collides with mortality. When night falls, Everest reveals another of its terrifying traits: sound. Climbers commonly describe deafening booms and cracks resonating through the valleys, sounds which appear to vibrate the mountain itself. Experienced mountaineer Dave Hahn has himself admitted to thinking that the mountain was alive when he heard such roars. Science describes them as the sound of glaciers cracking and sheets of ice thundering down the slopes, echoes reflected in the still air. But for climbers, such sounds become intimate, portents that the mountain is moving under their feet. On Everest, silence is security, sound too often means calamity. One of the most inexplicable enigmas are the footprints. In 1951, Eric Shipton took pictures of gigantic prints pressed into the snow, human but far larger than any climbers. They caused international furor and reawakened legend of the Yeti, the abominable snowman of Himalayan tradition. Subsequent samples of strange fur located nearby were analyzed and revealed similarities to an extinct species of ancient bear. Sherpas continue to talk about a colossal, shaggy creature that walks unseen across the ice at night. Skeptics claim that the tracks are human footprints distorted, reformed by melting snow. Yet the myth refuses to pass into extinction, as if Everest hides one final animal from us. But Everest is also haunted by myth and footprints. At other times, its deadliest day comes from forces deep below. On April 25, 2015, a 7.8 earthquake struck Nepal, triggering avalanches crashing down Everest's flanks. Climber Jim Davidson at Camp 1 experienced the ground lurching before snow walls encapsulated tents and climbers. 18 lost their lives that day on Everest, almost 9,000 in total across Nepal. Provisions dwindled, communication collapsed, and terror strangled the camps until helicopters eventually evacuated survivors. Davidson went back a year later, refusing to let disaster shape his affair with the mountain. On top of the summit at last, he texted his wife, "I am standing on top of the world." The ascent became a testament in his eyes that the most fearful days would not be able to snuff out human determination. Despite all its death and quiet, Everest is full of surprise life. At 22,000 feet, the Himalayan jumping spider makes a living in rock cracks, eating insects blown up by the wind. Lower down, snow leopards stalk the valleys, Himalayan taurs graze on impossible cliffsides, and red pandas nest in bamboo thickets. Everest is not only ice and rock, but a delicate ecosystem, showing that even in the most inhospitable places, life hangs on. But Everest's past is also filled with politics and intrigue. In 1952, rumors spoke of a clandestine Soviet expedition, climbers toting statues of Lenin and Stalin to leave at the summit. They never came back, and the Soviet Union claimed the mission was never made. In 2017, rescuers fell upon 4 frozen corpses in a tent at 26,000 feet, corpses that could not be matched to any known expedition. Were these the Soviets lost over 6 decades ago, their remains hidden beneath Cold War secrecy? The mountain keeps its secrets frozen, unwilling to part with its complete tale. Even contemporary legends are not secure. Julius Sturck, the Swiss machine, fantasized ascending Everest from both the Nepalese and the Tibetan side in a single venture. Renowned for unparalleled speed and ability, he appeared invincible. But in 2017, he slipped 300 yards on a known route, taken over by melting snow and brittle ice. His death was a shock to the climbing community and a sign of how Everest itself is evolving. Rising temperatures make it less stable, more volatile, and maybe more deadly than ever. But Everest's issues are not mystical or natural ones, humans are responsible too. Underneath the romance of summits is an unpleasant fact: trash. Thousands of climbers deposit tons of human waste every year. They are buried in snow and ice and don't decay but leak into streams, polluting water in nearby villages. What was supposed to be the Earth's cleanest summit has now turned, in most regions, into an ice latrine. Cleaning regulations and biodegradable bags are in place, but weak enforcement makes it worsen. Everest is now not only a symbol of aspiration but an indication of what occurs when human presence overpowers nature.